Welcome to New Wave Jiu-Jitsu guard passing. The sport of Jiu-Jitsu is divided into top and bottom position. The vast majority of our time in top position is spent passing an opponent's guard. Guard passing was always seen as the cornerstone of Jiu-Jitsu top game because the bottom player's legs represent danger. From guard position, an opponent can threaten us with submissions, sweeps, even kicks, and can stand back up to his feet at will. All that changes when you pass an opponent's guard. As soon as you pass an opponent's guard, you can attack with strikes and submissions with near impunity. In submission grappling, it is natural to ask whether guard passing still has the same value. After all, you can't strike in submission grappling, and you could simply attack your opponent's legs with leg locks without ever bothering to pass his guard. Even in submission grappling, guard passing retains its value. If my only attacks from top position were leg locks, I would quickly become very predictable. I would really only be attacking 50% of my opponent's body. Once you become predictable, you become easy to counter. Moreover, I will not be able to impose any kind of strangleholds upon my opponent, nor any kind of physical pressure. Physical pressure and fatigue are the single biggest determinants of success or failure in submission grappling. Without an ability to create that through guard passing, it's very, very hard to win at the top levels in the sport. If you want to be able to attack the whole body from top position, and this ought to be the goal for all of us, you must be able to pass an opponent's guard. Passing guard without the gi has a very different dynamic and pace than with the gi. The grip fighting tends to be faster. The grips overall tend to be less robust, and the number of effective passing movements tends to be less. This requires us to be able to move fluidly from move to move while accumulating pressure over time to get to our objectives. When my students first began their competitive careers, they were mostly known for pulling guard and attacking from bottom with leg locks. While this proved extremely effective, it was never the long-term goal, as it would have condemned them to attacking only 50% of the body. In recent years, they have exhibited an equally devastating top game based around unstoppable passing into top pins that lead into upper body submission holds. When observing them, you will note that they use a relatively small set of passing methods that are perfectly suited to no-gi grappling and integrate these passing methods together to form combinations that opponents find very difficult to stop. Just as a boxer learns only a small set of punches, but then combines them in myriad ways to form complex attacks out of a few simple building blocks, so too, my students use only a few passing methods in combinations. In this video, I will show you these methods just as I showed them, to give you the tools to become an effective no-gi guard passer. Understand from the start that there are 4 general passing scenarios in which you must be effective. First, you must be able to open a closed guard. You won't be able to engage in any form of passing if you cannot first open an opponent's closed guard. Moreover, you must be able to do so in a timely manner, as time spent inside an opponent's closed guard is time wasted for the top player. Second, you must be effective at passing a seated guard. The main methodology we employ in this video is based around body lock guard passing and various combinations of that. I will show in detail how this can be an extremely effective method of passing any variety of seated guard. Third, you must be effective at passing supine guards. Our main methodologies are toreando variations and other movements that branch off toreandos, along with floating leg pommeling methods. Toreando passes are based around gaining angle and distance on an opponent and feeding off his reactions to the threats that you create. Whenever you can gain distance and angle, they are extremely effective. I will show the no-gi adaptations I taught the squad and expect you will get similar results. If you cannot gain angle, the leg pommeling passes, floating over an opponent's center line, form an ideal counterpart. Fourth, you must be effective at extracting your leg from half-guard situations and completing a pass. In my opinion, half-guard passes are the single most effective passing methodology of them all, in both gi and no gi jiu-jitsu. I put a very heavy emphasis on this skill in my teaching. I will show you how to get there and how this integrates so well with the other passing methods shown in this video. Interestingly, you must remember that when my students train guard passing, they do so against training partners who are all expert leg lockers. The passing methods I show in this video have proven highly effective not only at passing the toughest guards, but also at shutting down the most dangerous leg lockers while you go and perform them. As a coach, I am constantly looking for ways to break a skill area down into various systems that can create very clear and easy to understand guides to action within that skill area. Some aspects of guard passing are sufficiently controllable that you can systematize them very well. For example, half guard passing and arguably body lock passing. In these areas, I will present them as a system. Other areas of guard passing are much less controlled and far more chaotic. Precise systems don't fare well in chaos. Instead, general heuristic rules that give general guides to behavior perform much better than complex systems. So I will present my favorite guard passing heuristics as I teach them to my students. I am sure they will benefit you as much as they did them. Let's get started then with New Wave Guard Passing Philosophy and Practice. Welcome to New Wave Jiu-Jitsu Guard Passing. I'm happy to be back with my original assistant, Placido. Good to see you back.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to go over the squad philosophy of guard passing. When the squad first broke onto the competition scene, my athletes were mostly known for their use of leg locking skills. An unfortunate result of this was that we were kind of seen as a team based around leg locks and nothing else. In fact, my intention in bringing leg locks into the picture of submission grappling and making it one of the more important points was not to attack the legs. It was attack the whole body. The idea is always to attack 100% of the human body, so it becomes extremely difficult for an opponent to know where the next attack is coming from. That means if you're in top position, you have to be able to pass someone's guard. If you only had leg locks, you could only attack the lower 50% of the body, and you'd be making the same mistake that everyone used to make generations ago in the opposite direction. Instead of only attacking the upper 50%, you'd only be attacking the lower 50%. At the end of the day, you're still only attacking 50% of the body. Only when you can pass guard and go from lower body to upper body from top position can you attack reliably the entire body whenever you're in top position in the sport of jiu-jitsu. So guard passing has always been an important part of our training. In recent years, the squad has become well known for their passing ability. In fact, almost 50% of our matches now finish with upper body pins into submissions. And I want to show in this video our passing philosophy and focus on the elements that have made it gain considerable notoriety in the modern competition scene. Now, everything starts, as in almost all of my teaching, with the idea of a fundamental or central problem. The central problem of guard passing can be stated pretty simply. There is a very strong asymmetry in the human body between the strength and endurance of our lower body versus the strength and endurance of our upper body. Humans can walk effortlessly for hours over great distances. But if you took that same human and put them into a handstand and made them try to walk for even a short period of time, they would find it extremely difficult, even if they had the prerequisite balance to hold a handstand. Our arms are massively weaker and with considerably less endurance than our legs. The sport of jiu-jitsu recognizes this, and whenever we play in bottom position in jiu-jitsu, the general philosophy behind our sport is to match our legs against an opponent's upper body, because that's what enables smaller people to defeat bigger people. Given that the lower body is massively stronger than the upper body in all human beings, when you fight someone who's stronger than yourself, as much as possible, you want to match your strong lower body against his weak upper body. And that gives smaller people the single best chance of defeating bigger people whenever they're taken down to the ground and forced to work from bottom position. Placido. Now, this creates a problem. if Placido is working from guard position, what we don't want to do is create a situation where his lower body, his legs and hips, are fighting my upper body, my torso, arms, and shoulders. And this is exactly what most guard passing condemns you to enter into. If you look at most guard passing scenarios, they will start in situations where it's my upper body against his lower body. It has to be this way because my lower body is involved in base. That's my base of support. If I didn't have my legs underneath me, I'd literally topple over. Placido, on the other hand, already has base through his back. So he has all four limbs completely open and ready to fire. My two strongest limbs are preoccupied with my base of support. And so the only thing left for me to work with is my upper body. And that creates a pretty regrettable situation. It means that Placido can use his strong lower body against my weaker upper body. So even though overall I'm heavier and possibly stronger than Placido, I'm using the weaker half of my body to fight the stronger half of his. And that's really where the fundamental problem begins. As we try to engage in situations like this, my arms quickly tire and get overwhelmed by the strength of his legs. Even though I'm several weight categories heavier than Placido, my arms are not as strong as Placido's legs. And as a result, I'll fatigue over time and eventually get pulled into all manner of submission holds. Okay? So there's the fundamental problem with guard passing. Most guard passing requires my legs as a base of support, whether I'm on my knees or whether I'm standing. And so the strongest half of my body is preoccupied with base. That means I have to fight his legs with my upper body. And in general, that's a losing battle. Thank you, Placido. So there's the fundamental problem. Jiu-Jitsu is predicated on the idea of taking the stronger half of our body, the lower body, and using that as much as possible to fight our opponents. And yet guard passing appears to work with the exact opposite framework in mind. Because my legs are preoccupied with my base of support, I have to use my upper body. And that just seems like a losing battle. This video is about how to avoid that losing battle. And how even though at beginner level, when you first come in, yes, it is an unfair battle. It is his lower body versus your upper body. There are ways of training yourself and playing this game that overcome that fundamental problem. And this will be the subject of this video. Now, we're looking at solutions to this central problem of guard passing. One of the major solutions is, again, based around a fundamental insight about the human body. Guys, always understand the study of Jiu-Jitsu is essentially the study of the strengths and weaknesses of the human body. It's learning to exploit the strengths and avoid the weaknesses in your own body while exploiting the weaknesses in your opponents. All Jiu-Jitsu is ultimately a study of the strengths and weaknesses of the human body, and this guard passing video is going to be a good example of how we use that insight. Now, we talked about the asymmetry between the strength and endurance of our upper body versus our lower body. Now let's look at the leg and a very important asymmetry in the leg that we can take advantage of when it's time to pass guards and get around that central problem. You're going to notice in the legs that there is a radical asymmetry between the strength of the legs to push out and away from the torso versus pulling the knees up to the chest. Okay, humans are very, very strong at pushing. Okay, I can take even a relatively weak person, put them in a 45-degree leg press in the gym, and when they push, they can push up 600 pounds, no problem. Placido has no problem whatsoever. Just bring your knees to your chest. Bench pressing me, good. And he can easily and effortlessly move his whole body weight, despite the fact that I'm several weight divisions above him. Now let's contrast that with your ability to pull your knees up to your chest. I can have Placido push me in that manner all day with no problems whatsoever. But if I ask Placido to hold on to a bar with his feet off the ground and bring his knees to his chest and took out a timer, it's very unlikely that he would be able to go past 1.5 minutes. Okay, even though he has a strong core. Humans are extremely weak at pulling their knees to their chest, but shockingly strong at pushing their feet out and away from their chest. That is a core asymmetry in the human body. There's an analogy here which I use all the time when I'm coaching. The analogy of the crocodile's jaws. The crocodile has an immensely strong bite force. It can close its mouth with tremendous power. And yet, you can take that same crocodile, wrap some string around its snout, and it won't be able to open its mouth. In other words, there is a massive asymmetry in the crocodile between its ability to close its jaws and open its jaws. In one direction, it's mind-bogglingly strong, and in the other, it's shockingly weak. The legs are exactly the same. They are incredibly strong in that pushing direction. Very, very strong indeed. But when it's time to bring a knee to a chest, they can be held off very, very easily. Okay? You can perform a simple experiment. Placido, if you grab my ankles from here, make your legs straight, and bring your knees up to my hands. Good. I'm just going to throw Placido's feet down. And he has to bring his legs back up. You can do this experiment with each other in the gym. And what you're going to find is it becomes very, very tiring for your training partner in this position. And usually they can only last less than 5 minutes with this exercise. And in many cases, a lot less than that. You're going to find that your ability to bring your knees up to your chest rapidly fatigues any human being, even those in very good shape. So this is an asymmetry that we can really use. We don't want to get into situations where I'm in front of my opponent, where his feet point directly at me. Because when his feet point directly at me, that's when he's at his strongest. That's where the legs are so strong. And if Placido, for example, just bring your foot down tight towards the floor, just pushes with his knee, he'll not be out of balance inside his guard. You can take advantage of that incredible pushing strength. But if we reposition ourselves so that we're past the line of his hips and knees, and now he has to bring his knees up to his chest, that's where people become extremely weak. And that's when you can start fighting successfully with your upper body against your opponent's lower body. So let's go further into this idea. If I stay in front of Placido's feet, yes, the central problem rings true. His legs, his lower body, will always defeat my upper body if he has any kind of guard skills. But if I get past my opponent's hip line, you're going to see that now my weak upper body can beat his strong legs. Why? Because I'm not fighting the strength of his push, which is very strong. Rather, I'm fighting the strength of his pull, the pull of his knees to his chest, which is actually shockingly weak. And from situations like so, it's very easy to hold someone off and pass their guard. I can use my upper body to beat their pulling strength, but I can't use my upper body to beat their pushing strength. This point you will see throughout this video. It is a key point. It is in fact so important that when I coach, I have a special term for this. If I get past my opponent's hip line, this puts my opponent in jeopardy, where now he has to use his upper body frames to protect the vulnerability of his lower body. This puts him in jeopardy, where he is in 100% defensive position. And I can easily use my upper body strength to defeat the weakness of his pulling leg strength. As opposed to here, where I could never really hope to beat the strength of his pushing strength in his legs with my upper body. This point, which puts him in jeopardy, I often refer to as the J point for jeopardy. It puts my opponent in jeopardy where he has to use upper body frames, and now I fight the weakness of his pull with my upper body. Okay? So you'll often hear me talking in this video about stepping up to the J point. And from here, this is where we do our passing. Okay? So this is a key insight into our guard passing philosophy. Don't fight the pushing strength of your opponent's legs with your upper body. That's a losing gambit. Step up to the J point, where now you can fight the pulling strength of his legs with your upper body. And that is a battle you can win. We're looking at the idea of guard passing in this conceptual way, where we're seeing something of a central problem. This idea that I can't match my upper body against my opponent's lower body and hope to win. But we're also looking at the idea that if you couch it in those overly simplistic terms, you're missing the picture of how it is actually possible to pass someone's guard. Okay, people pass other people's guards all the time. Sometimes this is because the guy on the bottom just doesn't have a good guard, just doesn't know what to do. But we're assuming here that you're fighting someone who's an expert, has good guard retention skills, and still they get passed. How? By working in accordance with the principles which we're trying to outline now. Another asymmetry in the body, which is very, very important for the purpose of guard passing, which will form a big part of this video, is the asymmetry between the strength of pushing, which we've already seen is very strong in the human leg, and curling the leg at the hamstring. Just as the biceps of the arm are responsible for curling, the hamstrings of the leg are essentially a leg bicep, and they curl the foot up to the buttocks. So for example, if we have Placido on his back, as we saw in the previous section, if Placido has his feet on my chest, he can bench press me here, or leg press me rather, all day with no effort whatsoever. This is just easy for him. But if Placido turns on his stomach with his legs straight, when he goes to curl his foot to his buttocks, okay, you can do it when there's no resistance, but even the smallest amount of resistance with a single finger will stop him in his tracks. Okay, so one finger he goes to curl will stop him with no problems whatsoever. There is no way, lie down, Placido, I could stop, the other way. There is no way I could stop Placido's foot with one finger in this direction. There's not a person on the earth that could do that. Okay, but in the curl direction, even an old fool like me can easily do it. Okay, so you see there is a radical asymmetry between the pushing extension of the leg versus the curling contraction of the leg. As much as possible, you want to take advantage of this when it's time to pass guard. Now, a huge part of this video is going to be based around this principle. It comes to the fore when it's time to pass your opponent's half guard. Think about this, guys. If someone is in front of us, they have various surfaces of the leg that they can use to push. The sole of the foot is an obvious example. Even the shoelaces can be used as a frame to push me back. The shins can be used to push me off and hold me back. And the knee, say for example, knee shield, can be used to push me back. Now, you can see that the sole, the shoelaces, the shins, all the way up to the knee could be used to push. Here's a critical insight for you. The knee is the last pushing surface of the human leg. Once you beat the knee, they can only pull. So if I get past my opponent's knee, and he has neither a knee shield, but just half guard working from here, he can only pull with his legs now. There's nothing left to push with. If a knee ever comes in front, well, now he can push again. And he can use this pushing strength of his legs, and that's a real pain in the butt. But if I ever beat the two knees, now he can only pull. And as we've seen already, the pulling strength of the legs is far, far weaker than the pushing strength. And it will be this core insight which makes for many of our favorite passes. I can defeat the pull and curl of his legs so much more easily than I can defeat the push of his legs. I'll say this again. The pushing strength of the human body and the legs is impressive, but the curling strength of the legs in the human body is laughable. If you fight against his curling strength in half guard, you will have a lot of success. So a big part of this video is going to be exactly that. How to force our way into half guard and take advantage of this fundamental asymmetry in the human body between the impressive pushing and extending strength of the leg versus the rather weak and contemptible curling strength of the leg. We're looking at a central problem of guard passing, and we've seen that central problem is that if we don't play our cards right, we're going to get locked into a losing battle. And that losing battle is our upper body against his lower body. Okay, as we've seen already, the human body is set up so that the lower body is immensely strong, the upper body much less so. And so anytime you're fighting someone in your own weight division or above with your upper body versus their lower body, it's a losing gambit. But we've got to go further than this, and we've got to understand the leg is set up in such a way that, yes, it is very strong in certain ways, in particular in naive pushing ways where you're right in front of your opponent's feet. But in some ways, it's really weak. Okay, one of these examples of weakness is the difference between flexion and extension. If there is more than 90 degrees between your opponent's lower leg and upper leg, the leg is incredibly strong. When it goes to extend, it can do so with great strength. However, the closer the foot is pinned to the buttocks, the weaker it becomes. So, for example, if Placido has his leg at 90 degrees and goes to extend his leg, he easily overcomes my arm. Okay, it's an easy thing for him to just rise up and go. But if I take his foot and pin it down here to his buttocks, when he goes to do the same thing, it's considerably more difficult. He's much weaker in this range of motion with the foot flexed all the way down towards the buttocks than he is here and beyond. You can see this in so many ways. If Placido, sitting up, has 90 degrees between lower leg and upper leg, look how easily he can just elevate me and make me float in the sky. Okay, even though I weigh more than Placido, he has no problems whatsoever flipping around like a pancake. Now contrast that with situations where we pull his feet into his buttocks and cement it in place with, say, for example, a body lock. Now when he goes to extend those legs, it's well nigh impossible because I've caught him in that arc of motion of weakness where the feet are flexed and tight to the buttocks. And it's in situations like so that we can make strong legs weak. And again, contrast this with situations where there's 90 degrees. Now, Placido can easily sweep me around the mat with no problems whatsoever because he's working with the 90-degree rule. If his legs stay flexed at 90 degrees or above, his leg is very, very strong. But as the foot gets pinned and flexed all the way down to the buttocks, that's where he becomes weak. And the great manifestation of this principle that we'll be looking at in this video is the idea of body locks, which do a great job of locking our opponent's feet into that zone of weakness. We'll also look at tight waists, like so, which do a similar thing, not quite as controlling, but almost as good. And anytime we can pin those feet into that weak, flexed position, you can overcome your opponent's lower body with your upper body. This is another excellent way of conceptually thinking about how to solve the fundamental or central problem of guard passing. Now, we're looking at this idea of a central problem of guard passing. We always want to avoid situations where my upper body is being matched against my opponent's lower body. It's just a losing gambit. We've seen 3 conceptual ways to overcome this problem based around simple insights about the nature of human physiology. Now let's look at a 4th way of conceptually overcoming the problem. Instead of making this about his legs versus my upper body, let's make it about my legs versus his legs. Now there's an obvious problem here. I need my legs for base. Okay, I need my legs underneath me, whether I'm on my knees, whether I'm on one knee, or whether I'm on 2 feet. Okay, I need my legs underneath me for base. And that's what seems to create the problem. Now it's my arms versus his legs. Okay, but what if we took a different approach? What if we used our arms for base and our legs for passing? Now you're probably thinking, well, what the hell does that mean? I have to go into a freaking handstand? What are you talking about here? No, it just means that from situations where I get one leg in and one leg out, I can use my hands for base of support. And as a result, my legs make a strong body. My legs now become weightless. And as a result, from here, we're going to see there are many ways for us to pass. And you can see now it's my legs versus Placido's legs. I'm using my legs to pommel into situations where my legs fight my training partner's legs. Okay? So it's no longer my arms versus Placido's legs. It's my legs versus his legs. That's a fair fight. Legs versus legs is fine. What I don't want is my upper body, my arms against his legs. That's not a fair fight. So if I substitute my hands as a base of support instead of my legs, now I can bring my legs into the battle. And now we've got that fair fight of legs versus the unfair fight of my upper body, my arms versus his legs. So if we can use our hands as a base of support, and a big part of what we do will be our float passing series, where we work from in here, where my hands are used as a base of support. Here, it's my legs versus his legs. And as we say, that's a fair fight. That's something we can live with. So that's our next or final conceptual point about overcoming the fundamental problem of guard passing. we've looked at the idea of the basic concepts and problems of guard passing. Now it's time to look at the 4 scenarios in which you must be effective. At the end of this video, I want you to be an effective no-gi guard passer. Okay, there's 4 scenarios that you have to be able to work in and efficiently go to work and overcome an opponent. First and most obvious is close guard. If your opponent locks around you with his legs and his ankles crossed behind you, you have to be able to get into that guard open behind you with a minimum of fuss and bother. Okay, so this is your first and most important scenario. You have to be able to open a closed guard. If you can't open a closed guard, there's no going forward, there's no guard passing. You can't even get started. So this is the first scenario in which you must be effective, and by the end of this video, you will be. Now, second scenario, your opponent is seated. Your opponent has 2 fundamental choices in guard position. He can be in a seated guard, or he can lie down on his back in a supine guard. That's the fundamental choice that he has. You have some control over that, but not a lot. So you've got to be effective with both, because you don't know. Some guys prefer the supine situation, some guys prefer the seated situation. Okay? I have to be able to control and pass against someone in a seated situation like so. If they elect to go down to supine, then I should, regardless of whether on my knees or standing, be able to pass from here as well. Okay? And the 4th great scenario is one where he locks one of my legs and we're working from here with one leg contained within his legs, the so-called half guard situation. Okay? So, very simple to understand now. 4 scenarios in which we have to be effective and which this video is concerned with. First, close guard. You have to be able to open up a closed guard. If you don't have that basic skill, none of the other stuff is going to work for you. So this is our starting point. Second scenario, seated situation. I should be able to pass against a seated opponent, and I should be able to put his shoulders down on the mat and force him to the 3rd scenario, supine guard, where he works like so. Okay, and I should be able to pass a supine guard at will as well. And the 4th scenario, we have to be effective in the so-called half guard situations where he's trapped one of my legs, and from here, we're working chest to chest. Okay, so this video is based around those 4 scenarios. You will have to be expected to excel in all 4, because you don't know which one your opponent will use, and failures in any one of them are easy for him to exploit. So those are the 4 scenarios where we expect you to excel by the end of this video. Now, the whole purpose of this video is to turn you into a highly competent, even elite level guard passer. Let's understand right from the start that anytime you get into a guard passing battle with a talented opponent, there are 3 nemesis that are constantly going to give you grief, problems, and you have to learn how to overcome them. Let's have a look immediately at what these are. If Placido is working, let's say, from a supine guard situation, the first big problem you're going to have to confront is that once you gain angle on an opponent, you will constantly be working against your opponent's knee-elbow connection. As long as your opponent's elbow and knee are connected, we'll do it on both sides, Placido. As long as there's connection here, there's no way for me to penetrate down to my opponent's chest. Okay, I can't get chest-to-chest contact. If I can't get chest to chest, or at least my knee to my opponent's stomach, there's no guard pass. So as long as he maintains the integrity of his elbow and knee, there's not going to be any guard pass. At some point in the action, I have to separate the elbow and knee so that either my chest or my knee can penetrate through to score. Now, on the face of it, seems like a very difficult battle, because many of our opponents are very flexible and they do a good job of maintaining elbow and knee integrity. Understand there are some things in your favor. The more they maintain that integrity, the more they're caught in a defensive posture from which they can't actually attack you. If your opponent tries to attack, that will always imply some kind of separation of elbow and knee. So as they get ultra defensive, they get harder to pass, but on the other hand, they're less dangerous to you. If, on the other hand, they start extending, that's when from here we can start stepping into the space and taking advantage of the lack of elbow and knee integrity. That's the first big thing you're going to have to fight against. Now, elbow and knee integrity is one thing, but even if I do separate the elbow and knee, now you run into the second big problem. That's your opponent's outside leg. Okay, so your opponent has two legs. The problem of the inside leg is elbow knee. If there's a connection at the inside leg of elbow and knee, very, very hard to pass. But if I do manage to separate them, then the next problem is the outside leg. This is used as a mechanism of recovery, where he comes across and he either hooks outside my leg like so. Sometimes they'll hook inside my bicep and recover. Sometimes they'll bring their knee inside my bicep and use that to recover. Doesn't matter what they do. In all cases, if I beat the inside leg, then I have to win the fight against the outside leg. Okay, so there's always a kind of like this repetitive pattern. As I come in towards a training partner, I start getting angled. The first battle is against the inside leg, where I have to separate the elbow and the knee. Then I have to fight against the outside leg, which is used as a mechanism of recovery. Okay, so those are always your first two big problems. Inside leg, where the battle is essentially the battle of separating his knee and elbow. Outside leg, which is essentially the battle of preventing his leg from swimming across and helping him to recover guard. The third big nemesis you have to fight is your opponent's upper body frames. If I beat his legs, like so, the big problem we face now is those damned upper body frames. Now, his upper body, of course, isn't as strong as his lower body, but it doesn't have to be. It only has to be strong enough to hold me for a period of time until either the inside leg or the outside leg can start recovering. Okay, so there's this problem now of frames with the upper body. Understand that frames, it's true the arms aren't as strong as the legs, but they're plenty strong enough. If Placido puts hands on my chest, you can see, even though I weigh more than him, he can easily hold me up with those upper body frames. They can be used rather with extended arms. They can be used with forearms. And they can even be used all the way down here on the chest, where you can swim into underhooks and cause problems. Okay? So once again, the three big nemesis that you will always have to fight against as the guard passer. First is the inside leg. Anytime I get angle on an opponent, I have to break the integrity of his elbow and knee connection. Even if I succeed in doing so, now you've got a new problem. The problem of the outside leg, which comes over, makes contact, and realigns his body with me. This is usually done in conjunction with upper body frames, which temporarily hold me until the outside leg can come in, make connection, and pull the inside leg back in, and he recovers guard. So everything we do as a guard passer is essentially a continuous fight against those three nemesis. His inside leg with the elbow and knee connection, the outside leg with its ability to swim through and make contact with my body so it can realign his body with mine, and his upper body frames, which hold me temporarily until he can bring his legs back into position and reclaim his guard. The general advice that we'll be looking I'm going to give you general advice here, but we'll be looking at specific advice throughout the entire length of this video, because pretty much everything we do in terms of guard passing is essentially the attempt to overcome these three nemesis. Comes down to this. Let's give you a quick insight that will guide your viewing as we go further into the technical details in the video. When it comes to elbow-knee connection, it's a losing battle for me to fight in front of my opponent's feet. Okay, it's almost impossible for me to separate knee and elbow from here. But if I can create situations where I work at a point on my training partner's hip line, the point we often call the J point, because it puts my opponent in jeopardy. Okay, from here, he's 100% defensive. There's very few offensive moves he can make without some form of connection to my body and recovering movement. If I work in these situations, my pushing force on his knee has a better chance of separating knee and elbow when I work above the hip line. Even better when I work up above the shoulder line. I can push down the body much more successfully than I can push up the body. Here I'm fighting the maximal strength of my opponent's legs. I want to fight the minimum strength of my opponent's legs by operating here. Even if my opponent is framed out, just the action of continually pulling his knees to his chest is a physically tiring thing for my opponent. Okay, and from here, it's much easier for me to use movement, for example, run down the body and separate knee and elbow. That's going to create the space I need to penetrate through with my chest or my knee. In other examples, here, as we work elbows and knees together, I can separate his elbows and knees using the strength of my legs. If my arms aren't strong enough to do it, we'll see later on in the video, I can put a foot on and use the strength of my legs to separate his elbow and knee connection and create space for my legs to enter in and go to work. We'll be looking at a bunch of ways in which we can separate elbow and knee. That's the first great battle that you must overcome. The second battle, the outside leg, is typically won through the use of inside position. Inside position with my forearm, for example, means that when my opponent tries to bring his outside leg over, it's a difficult thing. Inside position with my head lower than his knee, means that when Placido goes to bring the leg in, I dominate the inside position with my head and forearm. He tries to use frames and recover. It's a difficult thing for him to do so. That enables me to separate elbow and knee on the inside leg and start passing people. We'll be looking at a lot of details of that later. Okay, so understand that when it comes to the inside knee and elbow knee connection, we're constantly looking to put ourselves in a superior position above the hip line, sometimes even above the shoulder line, where we can realistically separate elbow and knee. With the outside leg, most of our concern is based around inside position, where I dominate the leg from the inside like so, with my head just like so. In other examples, we'll look at the idea of inside position, where again, I have my forearm inside and my knee is inside his knee on the other side. And as a result, from here, we'll be able to push through and get into strong passes. Everything's going to come down to inside position when it comes to beating our opponent's outside leg. With regards to frames, our general modus operandi for frames is we never go into frames. That's where you get beaten. With frames, I either want to go away from them, say for example towards the legs, so they become less effective as we go down the body. And from here we can go to work. I never try to go straight to the head through my opponent's frames. That's a losing gambit. We always go down the body to the hips. Secondarily, I never present squared shoulders to frames. That's where they're very strong. I always want to turn my shoulders against frames. Like so. Never going square with my shoulders. Okay. Typically, we prefer to turn to the hips. That's generally the better direction. As he tries to get knee and elbow connection now, it's almost impossible because my head has inside position and my forearm makes it very hard for him when he tries to get knee and elbow connection. Makes it very, very hard for him to work. Okay. We can use distance as a weapon against frames. If he's stopping me here so that I can't get chest-to-chest contact, I can use distance through knee on belly to touch and score. And as a result, the frames simply aren't long enough to hold me off and I can get to my score. So in summary, with regards to frames, we never go directly to the head through frames. That makes it so easy for him to bring his legs in and recover guard. Rather, we always go away from frames towards the hips. We never present square shoulders, but rather always turning our shoulders and getting between his knee and elbow. We use distance, so that instead of trying to get chest to chest, we just go knee to stomach, and from here get to a score. So those are the three nemesis of guard passing. A huge part of the content of this video is simply an attempt to show how we overcome these three nemesis using concrete methods of guard passing that you see my students use in top-level competition. By having that simple insight right from the start of the video, it will guide your thinking process as you observe all the various techniques that we use throughout this video. Now, let's talk a little bit about the idea of guard passing At the end of the day, every guard pass has to end with established control for 3 seconds, or it simply doesn't score. Okay? Even if you're not interested in scoring, if you're fighting only in submission only, you got to demonstrate some kind of control. You can't just pass someone's guard for a fleeting second, they put you back in guard. That's worthless. You got to pass into control. The best forms of control in the sport always involve control of the head. So we control the shoulder line, head, chest to chest position. So when he goes to put us back in guard, it's going to be awfully, awfully difficult. Okay, so this will be the completion point of the best guard passes. Okay, but we've seen already there's a problem. Elbow to knee connection. Okay, as long as there's elbow knee connection, I can't penetrate to the chest and torso. Understand, when it comes to penetrating to the chest and torso, you've got 2 options. They're both excellent, and a big theme of this video is you've got to be good at both because they kind of complement each other. The preferred option in most cases is chest penetration, where my chest penetrates between his elbow and knee to his chest. Now, I'm sure you've all figured out over the years, there's a problem with this. Your chest is yay wide, which means you have to separate his knee and elbow a considerable distance to get through. Contrast this with the second option, your knee. You can score by going knee on stomach. Your knee is only this wide, so you can successfully penetrate when the knee and elbow are not that far apart. So say, for example, we're playing down here. If I get to even just a small penetration of the elbow and knee, I can finesse my knee in front of his, and then from here, if I can hold for 3 seconds, we score. Now, you can see what the advantage is. You can penetrate through a much smaller hole with the knee than you can with the chest. But I'm sure you can all see what the disadvantage is too. You're inherently unstable. This is a much less stable position than this. So essentially, you've got a trade-off when it comes to penetration for guard passing. You can either go knee on belly, which has the advantage that you can go through a much smaller gap, and you can go through frames. The length of his frames is counteracted by the length of my upper leg, as opposed to chest-to-chest methods, where I have to beat the frames as well as the knee and elbow. Okay? However, it comes at the price of control. Anytime we're here, you're inherently unstable. So we have to get used to the idea of dropping from knee on belly. Okay? I've got a near side drop and a far side drop. If we drop, anchor the head. Don't just put your hands on the floor, drop, and he just swims out of here with an underhook. Make sure when we go down, hip and head. So when I come down, hip, head, my elbow comes down, he goes to put me back in guard. That's tough. You lift and you go into your head. Okay? So once again, the 2 basic choices that you will have throughout your career. We want to get control of our opponent's torso. If it's knee and elbow, my chest is this wide. That's a big hole you got to create. I'm not going to say you can't do it. You're going to be able to do it a lot of times if you know what you're doing and you use the techniques we see in this video. But it's a big, you're asking a lot to go through with that. If you can, the advantage is complete control of the torso, head, etc. If the gap is much narrower, don't just say, oh, I can't drop my chest so I can't pass. Nope, you've got a second option. And that second option is the knee. As long as my knee is in front of his thigh, you can score. The problem is it's inherently unstable. So the second option is for us to put 2 hands on the floor and switch sides. As we switch, we go knee to knee, switch across, anchor, and pin. Okay? So once again, your 2 fundamental choices are chest penetration and knee penetration. Your chest is this wide, your knee is this wide. So one penetrates more easily, but gives you less control. The other is a more difficult penetration, but gives you great control. Use them both. When you can't get one, go for the other. Strong frames, knee and elbow together. This is not the time for chest penetration. This is the time to sneak in on the knee. It's inherently unstable, however, so I may well switch across to the other side. Okay? If, on the other hand, my opponent's aggressively attacking me, and there's a big space, aggressively attacking, there's a big space. Makes no sense for me to go into knee penetration here. There's a hole you could drive a truck through at this point. Okay, so if he's framing on me, from here I just swim all the way through and go down and get the more controlling chest penetration. Okay, so please understand there's two alternatives. Don't blind yourself by only seeing one. Understand the strengths and weaknesses of each. The knee on belly is great for beating frames because the length of your legs overwhelms his frames. But chest penetration will not go through here unless we make a turn through his frames. Okay? If the knee and elbow are connected, it's difficult to go through with the chest, but easy to go through with the knee. Now you run into a new problem, the problem of stability. So from here we have to anchor to the head and the hip. And as he goes to push us off, come down into position. Okay? So there you have it. Two ways to penetrate. They each have their good and bad points. To maximize your ability to pass a tough, resistant guard, you have to use both. Now, one of the most common problems that developing athletes run into when it comes time to pass someone's guard is that they have a natural and fully understandable tendency to chase the head first when they're scrambling at the end of a guard pass. Now, this makes sense because the final step of every guard pass is going to be some kind of control of your opponent's head and shoulder line. Okay? So if that's the final goal, makes sense to get to the final goal as quickly as possible, right? No, not in the case of guard passing. Why? Because as you chase the head, his hips become mobile. And ultimately, it's his hips and legs that are going to put you back in guard. So often what we see are things like this. The guy will do a good job of separating elbow and knee connection. They'll do a good job of going through the frames. And as they come into a side control position, they get a hold of the head and they bring their body up to the shoulder line too quickly. Right now, Placio's hips are free. So when I start coming up to the shoulder line, his knee penetrates into the space I made, and as a result, he puts me back in guard. I'm going to show that from the other angle so you can see exactly what the problem is. From a situation where I come past my training partner's guard, as my knees come up, watch my right hip. As I come up, my right hip gets exposed and the knee penetrates every time. Now from here, his legs are stronger than my arms, and he easily puts me back in guard. Okay, it's not the end of the world, but certainly not what we were looking for. What's gone wrong here? What's gone wrong is you identified correctly what the final goal was, and you skipped a step. And as a result, your opponent easily puts you back in guard. This is a game where skipping steps can be a good thing on occasion, but can also be a situation where you get heavily penalized. This is one of those situations where you get penalized. What should we do? Chase the hips first and the head second. Don't go chasing the head until you've beaten the hips. Now, what does it mean to say beaten the hips? That's a phrase. What does it mean in practice? It means connecting my knee to his tailbone and my elbow to my knee. When someone goes to shrimp, they plant their foot and they shrimp out. And then their knee comes in. And sometimes the leg comes over to back it up. Okay? So what I want to do is immobilize his hips. The way I do this is by taking my knee to his tailbone and my elbow as close to my own knee as possible. So that when he goes to shrimp,
it's heavy and hard.
It's carrying the weight, and I just move with it. So, when we go to pass someone's guard, always what we're looking for here, once we separate and we get that chest-to-chest contact, don't go forward up to the head. Be satisfied working down here, the elbow and knee. As he goes to shrimp out and put me back in guard, I stay over the hips. If I went to the head, nope, you go straight in. So it's important I stay elbow and knee close together and my knee right in front of his tailbone. If my knee goes up here to the hip too early, space develops and his knee penetrates. Take your time, guys. There's no rush. Beat his hips first, and you can always get to the head second. The more you transition straight to the head, the more problems start to develop. So always, from here, that's my first focus, the hips. He goes to shrimp.
Tough.
You can always work your way up at a later date and get up to the shoulder line and the head. Okay? So focus on beating the hips. It's the hips that are going to put you back in guard. The hips and the legs. Don't be satisfied until you've fully beaten them. Now, a good question that I'm sure many of you guys are asking right now is, okay, that makes sense. What about the knee on belly pass that you showed us earlier? How does that translate to beating the hips first? Same way, different technique. If I touch knee on belly in here, again, it's tempting to go straight for the head, and then all that space develops, you get put back in guard. But look how much space there is when I drop. You could drive a truck through that. The knee comes in, and it's so easy for them. When we're in these situations, watch what I do with my foot. Let's rotate. From here, my foot comes onto my training partner's legs. And from here, we start the action of rotating over our training partner's hips. Okay? I don't go forward to the head. I take everything back towards the hips and just sit over the hips and legs. When he goes to put me back in guard, you're literally riding on top of his legs. I'm literally riding over his hips. Go to put me back in guard. I can always get to the head at a later date. Okay? So when we're here, working, his knees are up, he's playing in this position. Look how we're constantly walking towards the hips. I don't crash down, start chasing the head, and he just goes right in. Rather, from here, I walk back over my training partner's hips. He goes to put me back in guard. Now, I start coming forward and controlling the head. Okay, same thing. Don't be in such a rush to get to the last stage. Okay, you all want to get up there and control the head and shoulder line. I understand that. It is the final step of all guard passing. But don't skip a step, because that's a damned important step to skip. Don't just forsake control of the hips, because that's the very thing, the movement of the hips and the legs, that's going to put you back in guard. That's what's going to realign his body with yours and bring his elbow and knee together. Don't give him that space to bring his elbow and knee together inside. Conquer those hips first. Get on top of them. Ride the hips. You can always get to the head later. Now, this video, of course, is about guard passing. When most people think about guard passing, they think about passing to the side, sometimes to the mount. But guys, please understand, at the high levels of the sport, in many, many cases, maybe even more than half of cases, your opponents will desperately try to get to their knees so that they don't concede points to you. so that there will be many opportunities for you to take an opponent's back as you put more and more guard passing pressure on them. Don't blind yourself to this. My advice to you is very simple. It's actually easier to take an opponent's back in most cases than it is to complete a pass into side or mount. The only exception to that is half guard. In half guard, that's no longer true. But in any kind of open guard scramble, it's almost always easier to ride the back and get hooks in to score than it is to establish top control for 3 seconds on a wildly escaping opponent. So guys, please don't blind yourself to the possibilities of taking the back. Don't think, oh, I've got to pass to the side, or oh, I've got to pass to the mount. Nope. If you see the approach to the back, put that as your priority rather than the side pass. Now, let's understand that your opponent has 3 major options when it comes to turning to avoid scores. He can turn into you. That will require, in most cases, that he has some form of underhook. It's very difficult to turn into someone when they have the underhook. Okay? So either they have the underhook, like so, or they just have their hands in close and they just turn in and get up to their knees. Okay? Now I know that in your first day in jiu-jitsu, you're always taught never expose your back to your opponent, and yep, there's a lot of wisdom to that. But guys, we're talking about a situation where they don't want you to score on them, and they know that if you pass, they score, so they will take some risks to prevent the score. And if they know what they're doing, the risk isn't as high as it might appear. Okay? So the first option is to turn into you. The second option is to turn away from you, like so, and get up to their knees. Now, I know that looks very risky, and yes, there is a risk associated with it, but it's actually a fairly standard form of defensive maneuver to prevent point scores in top-level jiu-jitsu, so you've got to get used to it. The next option is for people to do a half turn, where they just kind of turn in and they bring their top knee in. Why? Because they know you've beaten the bottom leg. They know that they can't establish elbow-knee connection because you've beaten the bottom leg. So they substitute top leg. And as a result, it's hard to get the score here because he's not flat on his back. His knee's in, and technically you haven't gotten past his knee line, so no score. Okay? So these are the 3 main options. Some people will turn into you, some people will turn away from you, and some people will do a half turn and bring the top knee in. And as a result, you don't get a score in any of those cases if they can successfully complete these maneuvers. However, you do get back exposure. And as I say so many times, I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say this, of all the positions in the sport, the back is king. So prioritize the back in these situations. Don't think you failed. Don't think, oh, I didn't pass his guard. Yeah, you didn't pass his guard. You did something better. You took his back. Okay, if you give me a choice between back and guard pass, I'm going with back every fucking time. Okay, so this is normal and happens a lot. Be ready for it. Now, with that said, let's have a look at the idea of how we're going to take someone's back in a combat situation. Okay, Placido's down. Let's put this in a situation where I'm passing Placido's guard, and from here I see him start to turn into me. Usually this is done with some form of underhook. Okay, when someone goes to turn into us, stay down. When someone goes to turn into us, our favorite method of taking our opponent's back is to use an elbow block go behind. So he has the underhook. So if I don't do something, it's pretty easy for him to get up. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to take my hand and stuff the head, and I'm going to step my knee over my training partner's head. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is to take my knee down to the floor and turn to his hips. Step number 3 is the elbow block, where I put my elbow in front of his hip, so that as Placido goes to get up, I just complete the move around my opponent's body. You have a choice now between going straight to seatbelt, that's one good choice, or going further, 2 arms in behind, and covering your training partner's hips. That happens to be my personal favorite. I've always preferred to see my athletes covering the hips rather than just the shoulders. Okay? However, they're both highly effective, so you take your pick. So once again, we've done a good job of coming in and passing our opponent's guard, but I see him coming up towards me. So we post the head. As he comes up, I step over my training partner's head with my knee. My elbow shoots through to the opposite side. So I have my left knee on one side of his body and my left elbow on the other side. That means that as he comes up, we get a good ability to rotate around our training partner's body. My preference is always to cover the hips. You can always get a seatbelt afterwards. You can always stay in behind your opponent. If he goes to stand up, you'll be in a good body lock situation to control him. Okay? So it's a very versatile way of operating. Once again, from a situation where we've done a good job of passing, just like so. But as we come in, I see his underhook. He goes to step, my knee goes over. Now, even as he goes up quickly, we're in behind and covering the hips. Okay? So this is an elbow block, go behind. When someone comes towards you, turns into you with the underhook. Next method. We've done a great job of passing our training partner's guard, and he's like, I can't turn in, for whatever reason. So he elects to turn out. When someone goes to turn out, our favorite method of operating is a tight waist. Okay, what does that entail? It entails moving to the hips, and as he goes to get up, I place my hand all the way through so that I'm elbow deep around his hips. And my knee goes on the back of his hamstring. Don't worry, I'll show you a better angle immediately after this. So that as Placido goes to get up, you're in a situation where you can easily get your near side hook in. And now we're in the perfect position to go forward and knock him back down to the mat. You have a choice between collecting the second wrist, taking my head well forward, and throwing the second hook in. And as a result, we can quickly break him down to the mat. Or we can work with a single hook in. Okay? My favorite way to go out of that is always with a power half Nelson, which enables us to drive him down to the mat and into a finishing position. We're going to show that from a different angle. Okay, we've done a good job of passing our training partner's guard. As he goes to get up, watch how I put my ear on his back. I don't want my head in front. I put my ear on his back. As he goes to turn, I place my knee on his hamstring. That functions like an anchor to slow him down. Now my hand comes all the way through here, so I can hold the hips. So that as Placido goes to get up, my second hand comes here, inside his thigh. So I hit a thigh pry, where my hand goes in as a pry. As he goes to get up, that creates a space for my right hook to enter. And now we're in the perfect position to replace our hand with our leg and drive forward and into a situation where we can attack. Seen from another angle. We've done a good job of passing from here. My head comes behind. I take my knee and place it on his hamstring. My hand comes through elbow deep. My hand thigh pries, so as he goes to get up, my foot goes in easily as a hook. Another great option from here is to come forward into a power half. As he tries to get up, the power half breaks him down to the mat, and we're in perfect position now to go in on the attack. Okay? So, that's a great way to deal with someone who turns away from you, anchoring them at the leg, slowing down their progress, and using the tight waist to slow them down. Let's do a little experiment here, Placido. On your knees. When we come in and put someone down to a hip, this tight waist grip combined with ear position on his back. Placido, just go to get back up to your knees.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it just feels like you've got your mother-in-law hanging onto your back, and you just can't get up quickly and get away.
She's heavier than that.
As she goes to get up, we're constantly looking for either the wrist or my leg on the back of his leg. Combined with that thigh pry, it's very easy now to get that second hook in. And now we're ready to play. Okay. So, third option. What if my opponent makes a half turn, goes onto his side and brings a knee in? So Placido, you're here. So this guy's smart. This guy's like, okay, if I turn into him, he's going to hit me with an elbow block over behind. He's faster than I am. If I turn away, he's going to use that freaking tight waist to slow me down and get hooks in and score. So some guys play a cautious, cagey waiting game where as you go to pass their guard and they feel the knees being beaten, that you kind of end up in weird situations like this where you haven't really passed. When you see this kind of thing going on, go below his arm and punch through. So your chest is over his hips. Okay? You cannot have your opponent with an underhook. This is going to screw everything up. The good news is, when you're in this position, it's really easy to punch through. Now just face the hips. Okay, so there's some back exposure, but none of the other moves are relevant at this point. When we see this, we just come down, we take our hand, and we slap our opponent's foot right there to our ankle. Just rotate around a little bit. Now, from this position, I come up to my knees and I feed his leg to my leg. Then I just punch my elbow through and we roll. And as a result, we get beautiful back exposure and diagonal control that gives us a good attacking position. So once again, we do a good job of passing, but our opponent does a good job of bringing the knee inside, and kind of shutting us out. From here, we punch under their arm and sit through towards the hips. Now I slap their foot down and feed it to my foot. I take their Achilles tendon and the sole of my foot and bring it forward. Now I come up to my knees. I feed my leg in. I roll over my shoulder and my foot catches their Achilles tendon so that I can propel their body over in this direction and expose the opposite arm. Now we're in good position to go through and to finish our opponent. So there you have it. 3 ways your opponent can turn, 3 ways he can try and deny the guard pass to you, and 3 ways that you lead you directly to your opponent's back and a score and hopefully a submission. We're looking at the idea of guard passing, but what if I told you there was a simple, easy to understand, foundational principle upon which all guard play from the guy we're trying to pass is based upon? All guard work is based on the idea of control resides between the knees. I don't care what kind of guard you show me. Close guard, for example. My opponent's ability to control me is bound up with the idea that I am caught between his knees. And because he has a lock behind me, he can pull me around, he can pull me into arm bars, triangles, all kinds of things. I'm caught between his knees. There is nothing between my torso and Placido's inside knees. And as a result, I'm in trouble. Same thing, butterfly guard. Now, even though his feet are inside, his knees are around me. And the inside of his knees control me. And as a result, he can lift me up in the air. He can sweep me over to a side. He can off-balance me left and right, etc. Because he can use his knees to move me around. Again, the inside of his knees have direct contact with my torso. And as a result, he controls me. That space between his knees, that's his kill zone. That's where he controls me and ultimately seeks to kill me. That sounds a little extreme, doesn't it? Sorry.
Oh, I would do it.
He definitely would. Now, this is true even in situations where he doesn't contact my torso, but rather one of my legs. Say, for example, De La Riva guard. Here, my leg is caught between his 2 knees, and he controls my lead leg between his knees. Reverse De La Riva. Again, he controls my lead leg between his knees. Turn this way. Half guard. He controls my right leg between his knees. The only time this fails is in situations where the control is below my knee, because now he can't stop forward progress and change of direction. So that's the only time this principle breaks down, is when the controllers have one leg below the knee. We'll be looking at that when we get into half guard passing. But essentially, all guard play is based on this very simple, easy to understand insight. Guard play is based on the idea of controlling an opponent's torso or one leg between your knees. What does that mean for us as guard passers? It means that if we ever put some kind of pushing force on the inside of our opponent's knees, we would be interrupting his ability to control us between the knees. So, for example, if my opponent had a supine guard and I put my knee inside his, I'm pushing his knee from the inside. If I put my elbow and tricep in front of his leg so that I could use my shoulders to push on the inside of his right knee, now I control the space between his knees because I can put a pushing force inside his knees. If I lacked this pushing force and this pushing force, well, then he would control me. But if I control the inside of his knees, when he goes to move me around,
much more challenging.
He's got nothing. And I, on the other hand, can easily start the action of passing. Okay? So our whole game is to interrupt his ability to control me between his knees. And there's hundreds of ways you can do this. Dalahiva guard. If I put a pushing force inside his knee, I'd largely negate the effect of the Dalahiva hook. Reverse Dalahiva. If I put a pushing force on the inside of his knee, I'd largely negate his ability to work. Half guard. If he controls the space between my knees and I have no ability to push on the inside, he controls me here. This is a dangerous position for me. But if I get my body pushing from the inside here and watch my left foot goes in, so I now have a pushing force inside his knee. When he tries to control me between his knees, no way. Now I control the space between his knees. He tries to do anything meaningful to me, it's impossible and very easy for me to pass. Our whole game is to shut down the one thing he needs to be effective from guard position, which is to control my body above the knee between his knees. If I can ever exert pushing forces inside my training partner's knees, I interrupt his entire guard game. And that's pretty much what we're looking for every time we go to work.
Supine?
Yep. Every guard pass methodology we work with is founded on this simple principle. Here, my right knee is putting a pushing force on the inside of his leg. My left foot creates a situation where if I extend, I can get my knee putting a pushing force inside his knee. So when Placido goes to play guard, he's got nothing. He has no ability to control me between his knees. But I, on the other hand, have a great ability to control the space between his knees. And so inevitably in situations like this, I'm going to win every time. Simply stated, if he has direct contact with my leg or my torso with the inside of his knees, he's winning. But anytime I have a pushing force on the inside of his knee and I control the space between his knees, I'm winning. So we're constantly looking to create inside domination of our opponent's knee, some form of pushing force that ruins his ability to control me between his knees. Interestingly, this concept has a flip side. If his whole game is based on controlling me between his knees, a big part of our game should be making damn sure we're never between his knees and generating what we'll be calling outside knee exposure throughout this video. If I can ever expose the outside of an opponent's knee and create a pushing force on my training partner, when he goes to play guard, he's worthless because I'm not between my opponent's knees in any way, shape, or form. If we're working float position, If I can take my left knee strong, your arm, Steve, man, come on, man. If I take my knee and put my knee on the outside of my training partner's leg and push so that my foot exposes the outside of his knee, when he goes to play guard from here, he's got nothing. When I ride over my training partner's legs and I have a pushing force on the outside of his knee, he goes to play guard. Technically, I'm not past his guard, right? I can pass his guard, I'm not past his hip line, I'm not controlling his head. But if he tries to do anything meaningful from here, he's completely shut down. And so, one of the greatest insights I can ever give you, if you're going to become a master of passing guard, is the incredible value of exerting either pushing forces on the inside of the knee, using your feet, shins, hands, shoulders, lat muscles, whatever it takes, and creating situations where you dominate the space between your training partner's knees. You've got to bring your knees together. You can't. If I didn't have those spaces, you could easily bring your knees together, and now you can attack me any way you want. Or the flip side of this, getting outside of his knees and pushing forces across the body on the outside of his knee. So that from situations like this, he goes to play. It's tough. It's so difficult for him to do anything effective. We're constantly looking to create situations where we're taking knees across and pushing forces on the outside, the exposed outside of the knee. If we can't do that, then we're looking to create situations where I put pushing forces on the inside of his knees. So at no point does our opponent have direct access to our torso between his knees, or a leg between his knees, like so. We're always looking to create pushing forces on the inside of his knee, so that the space between his knees is dominated by me, not by him. And if I can't dominate the space between the knees, then I want to create domination of the outside of the knees. And if I can keep this simple principle in mind, and you'll be seeing it time and time again throughout this video, in very specific, nuanced ways, you'll be much more effective when it's time to shut down and pass a dangerous opponent's guard.